"You're not allowed at my wedding, Dad." My own daughter had banned me from the most important day of her life because I dared to warn her about the dangerous man she was about to marry. 6 months later, the wedding video that broke the internet wasn't the dream celebration she'd envisioned. It was footage of her new husband brutally yanking her hair, while 200 distinguished guests watched in stunned silence. The horrifying moment went viral, transforming her perfect day into a public nightmare. But that savage act caught on camera was only the beginning. The real horror began when the lights went out. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. Before we go back to that first dinner meeting, have you ever had a gut feeling about someone that everyone else ignored? Looking back now, I should have trusted my gut from that very first handshake. But sometimes a father's love makes you hope you're wrong, even when 30 years of police work is screaming otherwise. It all started with a Tuesday evening phone call. I was nursing my second cup of coffee when Vivian called, her voice practically dancing through the speaker. "Dad, I need you to meet someone really special. Can you do dinner tomorrow at Marcello's?" Marcello's, the kind of place where they fold your napkin in the restroom and the wine list costs more than most folks' rent. But when your only child asks you to meet someone special, you say yes. I arrived 20 minutes early, old cop habits. The restaurant hummed with Denver's elite all-soft conversations and expensive silverware. I picked a corner table and ordered bourbon, neat settling in to wait. When Vivian walked through those brass doors, she looked radiant. But it was the man beside her that made every instinct I'd honed over 3 decades start paying attention. Dominic Ashford moved like he owned the world. His charcoal suit probably cost more than my pension tailored perfectly across broad shoulders. When he shook my hand, everything screamed success. The confident grip, the warm smile, the commanding presence. "Mr. Lockwood," he said, voice carrying perfect respect and charm. "It's an honor to meet the man who raised such an incredible woman." Smooth, almost too smooth. I watched him pull out Vivian's chair, hand lingering on her shoulder. When the sommelier approached, Dominic ordered expensive wine without even glancing at my daughter. "You'll love this vintage," he told her. Not asked. Told. The conversation flowed easily. Dominic painted himself as self-made success. Luxury developments in Aspen high-rises and Denver commercial properties across Colorado. Every story perfectly crafted to impress. But 30 years of reading people taught me to watch the spaces between words. I noticed how he checked Vivian's phone when it buzzed, scanning the screen before she could reach it. His hand found her back whenever she leaned forward, guiding her like a puppet. Most telling, I watched my independent daughter glance at him before ordering dinner. "The salmon looks good," she said tentatively. "The filet's better here," Dominic replied with that practiced smile. "Trust me, sweetheart." She ordered the filet. Every time I tried steering toward personal territory, family background details that matter, Dominic deflected like a seasoned politician. Charming business stories, smooth redirects to safer ground. He was professionally good. Too good. When he excused himself for a business call at 9:30, I leaned toward Vivian. "How long have you been together?" 6 months, she replied, eyes following him. "Isn't he amazing, Dad? He's everything I never knew I was looking for." I saw genuine happiness in her face, but also something else. Relief, as if she'd found someone to make her decisions. "He takes care of me," she added, and the way she said it made my chest tighten. "He says I don't need to worry about anything anymore." When Dominic returned, sliding back into control, I studied that perfect smile, that calculated charm. Everything felt rehearsed, like watching an actor who'd perfected his role. Walking to my truck under Denver streetlights, I couldn't shake one thought. I just watched a performance. A very good performance. If only I'd known then what I was really seeing. The opening act of a nightmare that would nearly destroy everything I held dear. The weeks that followed should have been my wake-up call. But you know how it is when you're watching someone you love slip away. You keep hoping it's just a phase. It wasn't. Our weekly father-daughter calls, which used to stretch for an hour of easy conversation, started getting shorter. Much shorter. What used to be natural chats became guarded exchanges where Vivian seemed to be listening for something in the background. The first alarm bell came when she canceled our standing Sunday lunch. A 3-year tradition. "I'm so sorry, Dad, but Dominic planned a surprise weekend to Vail. I just found out this morning." A surprise she learned about that same Sunday morning, for that same day. When I finally reached out to her friends, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. Sarah from book club said Vivian hadn't attended in 2 months. She said Dominic prefers quiet evenings at home. Her college roommate Lisa was more direct. "I'm worried Asher When I invited her to my birthday party, she said she had to check with Dominic first. Since when does Vivian check with anyone? Since never. The breaking point came during a casual coffee run. I spotted them through the window of my usual shop, Vivian laughing at something Dominic had said. But when she threw her head back the way she always did, Dominic's hand shot out and clamped around her wrist. Not gentle, not playful, controlling. I watched my daughter's laughter die mid-sound, watched her glance around nervously, watched her lean in and lower her voice. From where I stood, I could see her mouth moving in what looked like an apology. An apology for laughing too loud. That's when I knew this wasn't protective behavior. This was control. Our phone calls became exercises in frustration after that. Every conversation got cut short. "Oh, Dominic's here, I have to go." When I'd call back, she'd have explanations ready. "Sorry, Dad. Dominic doesn't like when I'm on the phone during dinner." Or he thinks family time should be family time. The excuses multiplied. She couldn't meet for coffee because Dominic had planned something special. She couldn't attend her cousin's wedding because Dominic wasn't comfortable with crowds. She couldn't choose a restaurant for her own birthday without checking with him first. "He's just protective, Dad," she'd say when I probed. "You don't understand modern relationships. Things are different now." Different. Her favorite word for what I was watching happen. But I understood perfectly. I'd seen it in dozens of cases. The gradual erosion of independence, isolation from family and friends. The constant need for approval from someone who doled it out like treats to a performing dog. The final straw came when she called to cancel Christmas dinner at my place, a tradition we'd maintained since her mother died. Dominic's family invited us to Aspen for the holidays. She said, no excitement in her voice. "It's a really big honor, Dad. His family doesn't usually include outsiders." Outsiders. She was talking about herself like she was lucky to be tolerated. That night, sitting in my empty house with a Christmas tree decorated for a daughter who wouldn't be coming home, I realized something had to change. Passive observation wasn't enough anymore. It was time to take action. 3 days after that Christmas realization, I stood outside Vivian's apartment, knowing some conversations can't wait. "Dad, what are you doing here?" came her surprised voice through the intercom. "We need to talk. It's important." Her apartment felt different, colder. Our family photos had been moved aside, replaced by expensive art screaming Dominic's influence. "What's so urgent?" she said, not offering coffee. "We need to talk about Dominic." Her smile disappeared instantly. "Here we go again. I've been doing some digging. Business records, court filings, background checks. You investigated my boyfriend, Dad? That's invasion of privacy. His business partners have questionable connections. Sealed court documents from California. A restraining order from Jennifer Walsh 3 years ago. The case disappeared overnight, and so did she. People lie for money." She wasn't lying. Vivian's face went through confusion, anger, betrayal. "This isn't about Dominic," she said, voice dangerous. "This is about you. Mom died, and you couldn't save her. You were supposed to be this strong detective, but you couldn't protect who mattered most. Now you're paranoid about everyone. She weaponized my greatest failure against me. This isn't about your mother. Isn't it you can't stand that I found happiness? Someone who actually takes care of me. By controlling your life. By loving me, something you can't do without destroying it." The door opened. Dominic walked in with his spare key. "Everything okay?" I heard voices from the hallway. Vivian transformed instantly from defiant to uncertain. "We're fine," she said quickly. "Dad was leaving. Maybe I should stay," Dominic said, setting down his briefcase. "We need an adult conversation." I watched my daughter move closer to him, body language shifting to submissive. "Choose Dad," she said, voice steady but eyes pleading. "Support my happiness or lose me. I won't defend my choices to someone who refuses to trust my judgment. And if I can't support this..." She glanced at Dominic, who gave the slightest nod. "Then you're not welcome at our wedding?" The words hit like a blow. I saw satisfaction in Dominic's eyes behind false concern. "You should go, Mr. Lockwood," he said softly. "This is emotional." I walked to the door, turned back once. "When you realize what he is, call me. I'll be waiting." The door closed with finality. Standing there, listening to muffled voices, his soothing, hers apologetic, I realized I'd lost the most important battle of my life. But the war wasn't over yet. Sometimes when you've spent 30 years in law enforcement, you learn the system isn't always enough to protect people you love. Sometimes you go outside the lines. The morning after that devastating conversation, I drove to the old precinct where I'd spent most of my career. Now converted to private offices, but the bones were the same. Anthony Sullivan's nameplate hung outside what used to be Interview Room 3. Fitting. We'd conducted major cases in that very space. Asher Lockwood, Anthony said, rising with that familiar grin. I was wondering when you'd show up. You heard... Word travels. Daughter's engaged to a mogul with questionable past fathers, asking wrong questions. He gestured to a chair. Domestic situations are my specialty now. I laid out everything. The dinner red flags, gradual isolation, the Jennifer Walsh case that disappeared. Anthony listened, occasionally taking notes. Classic pattern, he said. Isolation control escalation. Wealthy ones are most dangerous. They've got resources to make problems disappear. I need you to protect her without her knowing. Ghost surveillance. Expensive and complicated, but doable. He pulled out a legal pad sketching organizational charts. I've got specialists. Former military ex-FBI people who know invisibility. He outlined the operation like planning a major bust. Surveillance teams around Vivian's apartment, workplace, anywhere Dominic might take her. Financial investigation, background checks, digital monitoring. The wedding's our biggest challenge and opportunity, Anthony said. We infiltrate. My people work as caterers, photographers, security. I've got someone who can pass for a wedding planner. The technology was beyond our old police days. Micro cameras like shirt buttons, audio devices picking up conversations from 50 yards, GPS tracking for real-time monitoring, legal considerations, building prosecution case from day one. Every piece of evidence collected properly, every witness statement documented, every interaction recorded with chain of custody. When this goes to court, we'll be ready. The financial discussion was harder. Anthony slid a figure across the desk. I stared at the number, stomach dropping. That's everything I have, Tony. Retirement house, equity, all of it. I know. His voice was gentle but firm. What's your daughter's life worth? I thought about Vivian's silenced laughter, the fear in her eyes, Jennifer Walsh, who'd tried speaking up and vanished. Everything. Anthony extended his hand. Then we have a deal. The handshake felt heavier than our old partnership greetings. This wasn't about justice for strangers. This was about saving the most important person in my world. Once we start, Anthony said as I stood, there's no going back. When we find what I think we'll find, it gets ugly fast. I thought about that closed door, my daughter's tears, the satisfied gleam in Dominic's eyes. It's already ugly, Tony. Now we're just going to make it visible. 6 months of planning, 3 weeks of final preparations, and it all came down to one moment that would change everything. Sometimes the truth doesn't whisper. Sometimes it screams. The Aspen Resort looked like something out of a fairy tale that morning. Snow-capped peaks stretched beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, and the ballroom sparkled with crystal and gold. 200 of Colorado's elite had gathered for what everyone assumed would be the social event of the season. I wasn't there, of course, but Anthony's team was everywhere. Through micro cameras positioned throughout the venue, I watched from my hotel room as guests arrived in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. When Vivian appeared at the grand staircase, she took my breath away even through a surveillance feed. Her dress was stunning, but something was wrong with her smile. After 26 years of being her father, I could read that face. She was terrified. The ceremony went off perfectly. Dominic played his part, devoted groom, successful businessman, the man who'd won Denver's most eligible bachelorette. But it was during the reception that everything unraveled. The ballroom hummed with conversation and champagne glasses. Vivian moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, and that's when Matthew Stone approached, her college friend with an easy laugh. Vivian, you look absolutely radiant. Their conversation was innocent. Old university memories, mutual friends, the kind of warm interaction Vivian used to have before Dominic. For the first time all day, her smile looked real. From across the ballroom, I watched Dominic's face change. The charming mask slipped, revealing something cold underneath. His jaw clenched as he watched his new wife laugh at something Matthew said. Who is this? Dominic's voice cut through the noise as he approached. Not, who are you, but, who is this? Like Matthew was an object to be identified. Oh, honey, Vivian's voice carried nervous edge. This is Matthew Stone from college. Matthew, my husband, Dominic. College friend, Matthew said, extending his hand. We were in the same literature class. I see. Dominic's handshake was brief, dismissive. And you thought my wedding was appropriate for a reunion. Matthew's smile faltered, sensing hostility. I should probably... Yes, you probably should. That's when Vivian made her mistake. She laughed, not at Matthew, but a nervous laugh, trying to diffuse tension. It was barely audible, but Dominic heard it. His hand moved like lightning. One moment Vivian stood beside him, radiant in her gown. The next, his fist tangled in her carefully styled hair, yanking her head back with such violence her feet left the ground. The look on her face? I'll never forget it. Pure shock, then searing pain as her scalp burned from his grip. Her mouth opened in a perfect O of surprise before the scream tore from her throat, raw and primal, silencing the entire ballroom. Her hands flew up instinctively, trying to grab his wrist to relieve the pressure pulling at her roots. Tears sprang to her eyes immediately, not from emotion, but from the physical agony of having her hair nearly ripped from her skull. "Don't you ever disrespect me again?" He snarled, his face inches from hers as she dangled from his grip. 200 guests froze mid-conversation, champagne glasses suspended, watching Denver's newest power couple reveal their true dynamic. The ballroom fell dead silent except for Vivian's whimpers of pain. That's when the phones came out. The moment Dominic saw the first camera flash, the first phone raised in his direction, his face changed again. The rage flickered, replaced by something like panic. He glanced around the ballroom, suddenly aware that Colorado's elite, politicians, business leaders, socialites, were all staring at him in horror. His grip loosened immediately. Vivian crumpled toward the marble floor, her hands still pressed to her scalp, wedding dress pooling around her like spilled milk. She tripped?" he said quickly, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "I was just helping her up." But it was too late. Dozens of phones were already recording, uploading, sharing. The age of social media meant that within seconds, the footage was spreading beyond that ballroom, beyond Aspen, beyond any hope of damage control. The monster had shown his face to the world, and the world was watching. The call that shattered my sleep came at 2 a.m, 3 hours after the last news outlet had picked up the wedding footage. I'd been lying awake anyway, staring at the ceiling and wondering how long it would take for the fallout to reach my daughter. Not long, apparently. "Daddy!" The voice was barely a whisper, so quiet I had to press the phone against my ear to hear it. "Vivian, sweetheart, where are you?" "Bathroom." Her voice cracked on the word. "Hotel bathroom. I locked myself in, but he's right outside." Through the phone I could hear muffled shouting, the sound of fists pounding against a door. "Where the hell are you?" "Get out here now. We need to talk about this mess you created." My daughter's breathing was shallow, panicked. "The video is everywhere, Daddy. Every news channel, every social media platform. He says it's my fault that I embarrassed him in front of everyone." Another crash against the door, louder this time. "You worthless wife. You think you can hide from me?" I could hear the pain in Vivian's voice, not just emotional pain, but physical. Her words came out strained, like she was holding back tears, or worse. "He grabbed my hair so hard, Daddy, I think he pulled some of it out. And when we got back to the room, Her voice broke completely. "Vivian, listen to me. You need to get out of there, right now. Walk out of that bathroom, past him, out of that hotel, and don't look back." "I can't. You don't understand. He's not the same person anymore. The way he looked at me after he saw those cameras, it was like he wanted to kill me. Then leave him." The silence stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, smaller, more desperate than I'd ever heard it. "Daddy, I was wrong about everything. About you, about him, about all of it. I should have listened. I should have trusted you." She was crying now, quiet sobs that broke my heart. "Please help me. I don't know what to do." Every instinct I had screamed at me to grab my keys, drive to that hotel and bring my little girl home, to hold her and tell her everything would be okay, that Daddy would fix it like I always had. But 30 years of police work had taught me something about patterns, about escalation, about what happens when dangerous men feel cornered. And sometimes the hardest thing a father can do is let his child face the consequences of her choices. "You made your choice, Vivian." The words felt like swallowing glass. "What?" Her voice was barely audible. "Daddy, I'm your daughter. I'm scared and I need you. You chose him over your family. You chose his version of love over the people who actually cared about you. You said you didn't need me anymore. But I was wrong. I was so wrong, and I'm sorry, and I—" "How can you abandon me now?" she whispered. "When I need you most." I closed my eyes, feeling every word cut deeper than a knife. Because sometimes learning means falling, and sometimes falling means hitting bottom before you can climb back up. "Daddy, please. You wanted to be an adult who makes her own decisions. So be one. Figure out how to live with the consequences of those decisions. I hung up before I could change my mind, before the sound of her crying could break my resolve. My hands were shaking as I immediately dialed Anthony's number. "It's happening," I said when he picked up on the first ring. "He's escalating. How fast can your team get to the Ritz-Carlton?" "They're already positioned in the lobby and on her floor. We've been monitoring the situation since they got back from the reception." She thinks she's alone. That's the point, isn't it? She needs to believe she has to save herself, but we won't let her get actually hurt. I stared out my bedroom window at the Denver skyline city lights, blurring through tears I didn't want to acknowledge. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, Tony. The right thing usually is. As I hung up and settled back into my chair to monitor the surveillance feeds, I whispered a prayer to whatever gods protect fathers who have to choose between their hearts and their children's lives. Sometimes love looks like abandonment. Sometimes protection looks like walking away. I'd been monitoring the surveillance feeds all night, watching through our cameras as Dominic paced their hotel suite like a caged animal. Vivian cowered in the corner, her wedding dress replaced by clothes that hung loose on her trembling frame, while he ranted about the viral video destroying his reputation. At dawn on day 2, everything changed. "They're moving!" Anthony's voice crackled through my earpiece as the GPS tracker showed westward movement. "Heading toward the Rocky Mountains." "This isn't good, Asher." I knew exactly where they were going. During my background research, I discovered Dominic's family owned a hunting lodge deep in the Rockies, the kind of place where screams get swallowed by wind and pine trees, where a man could do terrible things without witnesses. The drive took 2 hours through increasingly isolated terrain. Anthony's team followed at a distance, maintaining visual contact while staying invisible. By the time they reached the cabin, we were miles from the nearest neighbor cell towers or hope of accidental rescue. The lodge sat in a clearing surrounded by dense forest-weathered logs and broken shutters, giving it the appearance of abandonment. Perfect for what Dominic had in mind. Through long-range cameras positioned in the tree line, I watched my daughter stumble out of the car, face pale with exhaustion and terror. She'd been crying, makeup-smeared hair still disheveled from where he'd grabbed it. "Please, Dominic, let's just go home. We can work this out." His laugh was cold, mechanical. "Home. You don't deserve a home. Not after what you did to me." That's when he pulled the shovel from the trunk. "You're going to fix what you broke," he said, shoving the tool into her shaking hands. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone who matters. Made me look weak." Vivian stared at the shovel like it was a weapon. "I don't understand." "Dig." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Right there behind the cabin. You're going to dig your grave, and maybe then you'll understand what consequences look like." My daughter's face crumbled as she realized he wasn't speaking metaphorically. "Dominic, this is insane. You can't be serious." The hunting knife appeared in his hand, gleaming in mountain sunlight. "I am dead serious. Dig, or I'll do it for you, after I'm done with you." She started digging. Every shovelful felt carved from my own chest. I watched my little girl, who used to build sandcastles on family vacations, dig what her husband intended as her final resting place. "This is what happens to wives who disobey," Dominic said, pacing around her like a predator. "Who think they can disrespect their husbands in public?" Vivian was sobbing now, dirt streaking her face as she worked. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll never talk to another man again. I'll never leave the house. Whatever you want." "Too late for that." Anthony's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Asher, we can't wait much longer. She's in immediate danger." "Not yet," I whispered back. "If we move too soon, he'll know we've been watching." But as the hole grew deeper and Dominic's threats became more specific, I realized we were running out of time. That's when Anthony created the distraction. Branch cracking in the woods, then another, the kind of sounds hikers might make pushing through undergrowth. Dominic's head snapped up paranoia, replacing rage on his face. "Someone's coming!" he hissed, grabbing the shovel from Vivian's hands. "If anyone asks, we were never here." More sounds from the forest, footsteps, voices calling out in the distance. His carefully planned isolation was suddenly compromised, and his survival instincts kicked in. "I'll deal with you later," he snarled at Vivian before sprinting toward his car. The engine roared to life, and within seconds, Dominic's vehicle disappeared down the mountain road in a cloud of dust, leaving Vivian alone beside the half-dug grave. She stood there, shaking, still holding dirt in her trembling hands when Anthony emerged from the tree line. "Miss, are you okay?" He approached cautiously, hands visible. "I'm a hiker, heard shouting, and came to investigate. You look like you might need help." Vivian stared at him with a mixture of relief and confusion. The timing seemed almost too convenient, but she was beyond caring about coincidences. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I need to get somewhere safe." The porch light was already on when Anthony's car pulled into my driveway, casting that familiar amber glow I'd kept burning every night since Vivian had walked out of my life 6 months ago. I stood in the doorway, watching my daughter emerge from the passenger seat like a ghost of herself. She looked up at me with hollow eyes, dirt still streaking her face, her clothes torn from her ordeal in the mountains. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she saw me, really seeing her. Not the defiant woman who'd chosen Dominic over family, but the terrified girl who'd nearly been buried alive by the man she'd married. "Daddy!" Her voice cracked on the word. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're home." She collapsed into my arms, and I felt 6 months of anger and heartbreak dissolve into pure relief. My little girl was alive, broken, traumatized, but alive. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed against my chest. "You were right about everything. I should have listened. I should have trusted you." "Shh," I whispered, stroking her hair the way I had when she was small. "We'll talk about that later. Right now, you're home." That's when she pulled back, confusion replacing relief in her eyes. "How did you know to send him?" She looked between Anthony and me. "How did you know I needed help?" Anthony stepped forward, his expression gentle but serious. "Because he sent me to protect you, Vivian. Your father never stopped watching over you." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stared at me, understanding dawning slowly. You've been having me followed. I've been keeping you alive," I said simply. "Come inside. There's something you need to see." I led them to what used to be my home office, now transformed into something that looked like a detective's war room. Every wall was covered with photographs, documents, timelines, and evidence. Dominic's face stared back at us from dozens of angles. Surveillance photos, business headshots, court documents. "My God," Vivian whispered, turning slowly to take it all in. "Jennifer Walsh wasn't his first victim," I said, pointing to a timeline that stretched back 5 years. "There were 3 others before her, all wealthy, independent women. All disappeared after trying to leave him." Her hand flew to her mouth. They're dead. We don't know, but we have enough evidence now to find out." That's when Lieutenant James Cooper emerged from the kitchen along with 2 uniformed officers I'd worked with during my years on the force. "Miss Ashford," Cooper said formally, "we've been coordinating with your father and Mr. Sullivan to build a case against your husband. The footage from today gives us everything we need for attempted murder charges." "Footage?" Vivian looked confused. Anthony pulled out a tablet, queued up the video from the mountain cabin. "We recorded everything, Vivian. The grave, the threats, the knife. It's all here." As the footage played, showing Dominic forcing her to dig while threatening her life, Vivian's face went white. "He really was going to kill me." "Yes," I said quietly. "He was." That's when we heard the car in the driveway. Through the window, I watched Dominic's BMW screech to a halt. He emerged wild-eyed and desperate, a man who'd lost control of his carefully constructed world. "She's in there," he shouted, pounding on my front door. "Vivian, get out here now. We're going home." Cooper nodded to his officers, who took positions on either side of the door. I opened it slowly, keeping my body between Dominic and my daughter. "She's not going anywhere with you." His eyes were bloodshot, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained. "She's my wife. She belongs to me." "Nobody belongs to you," I said calmly. That's when he saw the tablet in Anthony's hands, still playing the cabin footage. His face changed as he realized what we had. "You were recording." "You set me up." "You set yourself up," Cooper said, stepping into view with his badge displayed. "Dominic Ashford, you're under arrest for attempted murder, domestic violence, and kidnapping." Dominic's hand moved toward his jacket, but Cooper was faster. Within seconds, he was face down on my porch handcuffs, clicking into place. "This isn't over," he screamed as they hauled him to the patrol car. "She'll never be free of me." "Never." I put my arm around Vivian as we watched them drive away. "Yes, she will," I said quietly, "because that's what fathers do. We protect our children even when they don't want us to." She leaned against me, finally understanding that sometimes the perfect trap is built from perfect love. 6 months later, I sat on my porch watching Vivian tend the garden she'd planted where Dominic's threats used to echo in my memory. He'd been sentenced to 15 years, attempted murder, domestic violence, kidnapping. The other missing women's cases were being reopened. Vivian had moved back home temporarily, healing through therapy and rediscovering the independence she'd lost. Our relationship was stronger than ever, built on truth instead of the careful politeness that had masked our old wounds. You know what I learned? Dad, she said, joining me with 2 cups of coffee. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones brave enough to tell us what we don't want to hear. I smiled, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. And sometimes protecting someone means being willing to be the villain in their story, at least for a while. She leaned against my shoulder the way she had as a child. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on you. That's what real love does, sweetheart. It waits, it watches, and when the time comes, it fights. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize this story isn't just about a father trying to save his daughter. It's about learning that sometimes love requires us to make the hardest choices, even when those choices make us look like the enemy. Betrayal stories like ours happen every day. Families torn apart by manipulation, children turned against parents who only want to protect them. But here's what I've learned after 30 years as a detective and a lifetime as a father. Real love doesn't always feel good in the moment. Sometimes it feels like abandonment, like cruelty, like being completely alone. God gave us instincts for a reason. When something feels wrong, when every fiber of your being screams danger, listen to that voice. I've seen too many betrayal stories where people ignored their gut feelings because they wanted to believe the best in someone. Trust is earned, not given freely, and wisdom often comes disguised as paranoia. The hardest lesson I learned is that you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You can build the perfect safety net, gather all the evidence, plan every contingency. But until that person is ready to see the truth, they'll keep choosing their prison over your protection. Sometimes God asks us to step back and let the people we love learn through pain. Grandpa stories and betrayal stories often overlap because older generations see patterns that younger eyes miss. We've lived long enough to recognize the warning signs, the red flags, the subtle manipulations that spell disaster. But experience is a teacher that gives the test first and the lesson afterward. To other fathers, grandfathers, and family members watching someone they love make dangerous choices, your job isn't to control the outcome. Your job is to be ready when they fall, to have your arms open when they finally come home, and to love them enough to be the villain in their story, if that's what it takes to keep them alive. Grandpa stories like mine remind us that protective love sometimes looks harsh from the outside, but God sees the heart behind the action, and He knows that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's destruction. The truth is, we can't force people to make good decisions. We can only love them through the consequences and be there when they're ready to choose differently. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below about your own experiences with difficult family situations. Your story might be exactly what another person needs to read today. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life grandpa stories that prove love sometimes wears the mask of tough choices.